Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG podcast. I'm Ramon Mejia, here bringing the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and author interviews. Episode number 275 of the show this week. We got 4 new reviews for you folks, and that's going to include Bleeding Edge, Edge Force Book Number 1, Jake's Magical Market, Apocalypse Online, and Leveling with the Gobs, a webcomic. Before we get into any of that, we're of course going to hit you up with some LitRPG news. And in LitRPG news, we had a couple of good stories here. This week was the final week for the Kickstarter campaign for Shadow Alleys Press new card game, Gentleman's War. It is still going on as of this recording, but there's only less than 10 hours left. So some of you might, by the time you listen to this, campaign might be over, but definitely go check it out if you're curious about it. They did finally reach their goal just with hours to spare. And they were like, hey, we have stretch goals now. A couple more $1,000. We can do extra stuff. So if you haven't checked it out, if you haven't looked to see if it's something you're interested in backing, it is fully funded, so there's no risk of you not getting your product or the rewards that you sign up for. But you can also help get extra things for everybody else. So definitely go check it out. We'll have a link in the show notes for their Kickstarter campaign. And other Kickstarter news, we have another company, Atheon, who publishes some LitRPG books in addition to fantasy and science fiction. They started a Kickstarter campaign for their own game, a 5e drinking companion game. There are 26 days left for them, though, so, go look it up. And our last bit of LitRPG news is a little bit late. It's Sound with Theater and Matt Dinniman collaboration. A LitRPG horror serial based upon the Kaiju Battlefield Surgeon series or book that Matt Dinniman wrote. I think it was last year or the year before. It's going to be a monthly released free serial download that you can download through the Sound Booth Theater app or through their website. The first episode was released on October 31st. We'll link in the show notes for the YouTube sample, which is only about 12 minutes long, but the full episode is over 2 hours long. So you can download it for free at soundbooththeater.com in their free section. And again, they do plan to release monthly new episodes in the particular serial for you to enjoy, get you to go check out their app, the website. It's a good product, especially if you consider that they're doing this again outside of the Audible ecosystem, which is always a huge risk, and I'm always proud of my friend for being ambitious. So definitely go support one of your favorite LitRPG narrators. Okay, on to stuff that is out now. We have Old School Unfrozen Book Number 2 is out. We also have Drake and Prince, from James McFarlane. Rise to Glory. We also have Bleeding Edge, which we're reviewing in the podcast this week. Player Reaches the Top, Book Number 7. We have The Nemesis, The Living, and NPC's Path, Book Number 5. The Centennial Tournament, Infinite Realms, Book Number 3. We also have Underverse, Book Number 6 is out for you to enjoy now, as is the Titan series, Book Number 8, Stone King. We also have the second book in the Wolfman Warlock series, Librio Hexer, which is a collaborative project between James Hunter and Dakota Kraut, set in the Completionist Chronicles universe. We have Blessed Time Coda, Book Number 2. And we have the amazing collaboration between Tao Wong and Katie Hanna for a System Apocalypse book set in Australia. And that's doing really well, so definitely go check that out if you love either the System Apocalypse or Tao Wong or Katie Hanna, or for me, all three. It's out for you now. We also have the 5th book in the Towers of Acalia series. Discarding Book Number 9 is out for you to enjoy. And a couple books that you might have missed in the super long slugfest. I'll be honest, this week it was a slog to go through Amazon to try to find the latest LitRPG stuff that came out in the last couple weeks. There were just so many titles that are losing LitRPG in their tags, but they're just fantasy or science fiction, or even worse, just stuff that's ripped off from translator sites on the internet. So here's a couple that are actually LitRPG, but you might have missed them. Forest of Skills, also the Fantasy Soldier, and the RPG Apocalypse, and also Arena Manager. And Civ CEO, book number 8, that's actually out if you happen to miss it. Also, Critical Failures book number 9 is out for you to enjoy. And another one that might have got lost somewhere, A Hero Reborn, and Community of Fear, which is the 4th book in Jonathan Brooks's Spirit Core series, which is a horror LitRPG dungeon system usually. So they're definitely creepy. I've read the first couple and I was like, nope, not for me. I mean, they're nicely written. It's like, I'm just not into horror though. So, but a lot of folks are, and it seems to be one of his yearly projects where he puts it out about Halloween for people who like that combination to enjoy. Okay, that's all the stuff I have for new LitRPG ebooks. On to new audiobooks, and that's going to include Death's Favorite Warlock book number 2, The Carnival of Fear, which is Spirit Core book number 3, the one Jonathan Brooks put out last year. Also Monsters and Legends, Infinite Realm book number 1. Civ CEO book number 4 is out as an audiobook. Battleborn book number 2. Also Cyber Squad 1, Blessed Time 2. So there's a co-release between the ebook and the audiobook for that particular book. The 7th Realm Part 1 of the 10 Realm series. It's actually book number 8 in the series, by Michael Chatfield, is out as an audiobook. Sword of the Moon King is out. Also is Dungeon Walkers book number 2. Also Level Up Kaiju. Also Worm Shards Savage Dominion book number 2. Also The Dungeon Leader, The Dungeon Slayer book number 3. Also, the RPG Apocalypse is out as an ebook and audiobook at the same time, as is the Drake and Prince. Also, the Clan Dominance, The Sleepless Ones book number 5 is out as an audiobook. So all kinds of nice new LitRPG audiobooks for the audiophiles in the who like audiobooks to enjoy, I should say. Okay, on to upcoming LitRPG. This is just where I read off a bunch of stuff that's coming out in the near future. It is a very nice way to see what's actually coming out without having to kind of like trying to nitpick through Amazon for a list on your own. This is all the stuff that has pre-orders and the stuff that I've been told about from authors who are publishing. And here we go. November the 9th is going to be The Legend of Randall Ghost Town, a LitRPG adventure. Also going to be Dungeon Core Line, Remastered book number 2. We also have Alpha Resplendent, Alpha LitRPG book number 4. The Range book number 3, The Guardian of the Verge, is going to be out on November the 11th. November the 16th, it'll be Gates of Thunder, The Loner book number 1. On November the 16th, it'll be The Bright Finish This. That's what it's called. November the 16th is also going to be The Houndsman, a base building LitRPG adventure. November the 17th, Cyber Squad Level 2. November the 18th, it'll be The Dungeon of Stories book number 3, The Warring Core. November the 18th, Valhalla Online. I believe this is the last book in the series. It'll be finishing it up. The author, Kevin McLaughlin, has actually republished with new covers and some editing for the first 4 books in the series previously. And this should be the last one that's completing out the series. It'll be new material, if I'm not mistaken. And it will be out on November the 18th. On November the 19th, it'll be The Buccaneers Do, an Isle of Destiny, November the 19th again. Also on November the 19th, it'll be Alpha Physics book number 3, Disquiet. On November 21st, Mercenary Manager, a dark isekai LitRPG team builder. On November the 22nd, Two Boys, The King's Soul book number 2. On November 23rd, Hero Killer, Neverstone book number 2. November 23rd, Fey Nexus book number 2. November 23rd as well is going to be The Wandering Inn book number 5, The Last Light. On November 30th, it'll be Defiance of the Fall book number 3. December the 1st, it'll be VR Hero book number 5. December the 7th, big day, it'll be Awaken Online Happy, which is a side quest story apparently. December the 7th, it'll be Cleaver's Edge, Morkster Chef book number 1, Monster and Orc. December the 9th, it'll be An Outcast in Another World, book number 2, title pending because they don't have it yet, apparently. That's literally what it says on Amazon. On December the 10th, it'll be Guardians of Astrofall, book number 2, called Astrofall. There we go. On December the 14th, Uncontrollable. On December the 14th, Frostworld, book number 3. December the 15th, it'll be The Sleepless Ones, book number 9. December the 16th, the second book in the Fantasia series by Simon Vale. On December the 21st, it'll be Epiphany Realms book number 2, Evolution. December the 22nd, it'll be The Frost Ridge in the Way series, book number 4. On December 26th, it'll be the 7th book in the Adventures on Brad series, the fantasy RPG story world created by Tao Wong. On December the 28th, Alpha Realm book number 3. December the 28th, it'll also be He Who Fights with Monsters, book number 4. On January the 4th, it'll be Magnus, book number 3. January the 17th, 2022, it'll be the 8th book in the Adventures on Brad series. So there we go. All the stuff I know is coming out until the is about January. So there are more titles. Like just too many to list. I actually have titles on Amazon pre-orders going up into 2023, and there's no point in me listing those because a lot of them are going to change, and this list is already long enough. So there we go. All the stuff that I know is coming out in the near future. On to new releases and reviews. Okay, first review of the week is going to be Bleeding Edge, Edge Force, book number 1, written by Matthew J. Barbarella. It is 379 pages, $4.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's very long description. Edge Force, a clandestine organization that leverages the best and brightest humanity has to offer to defend against the threats that can't be fought by normal means. J.D. Rideout is a washed-up writer with the best years of his career behind him. Nursing the wounds of a marriage breakdown, his kids are the only thing keeping him going. When J.D. wakes up on a tropical island in the middle of a white Sunday on Queensland Central Coast, chained to the ceiling, he knows something is very wrong. He feels like a character in one of his novels. For those who fight for Edge Force, unlock the ability to level up and gain powerful skills to help them fight against threats to our reality. J.D. is given a pistol and an axe along with a new call sign, Hatchet. Uprooted from his life and forced to fight for the fate of the world, Hatchet may just be the planet Earth's last line of defense. As Hatchet, he's tasked with fighting back against a shadowy cult that has reappeared after 15 years in hibernation. But fighting the cult isn't the only thing that drives Hatchet. These cultists are using the essence of an ancient entity to reshape reality into whatever their twisted imaginations bring forth. This entity is reaching out to Hatchet 2, propelling him towards an epic showdown with the forces of the Fellowship of Cosmic Truth. During the course of his mission, Hatchet encounters an unexpected ally, a German shepherd dog named Kaiser, who might just be smarter than Hatchet. Kaiser has his own reasons for fighting the cult, and the two form an unlikely alliance. That is a lot of novel description. It's pretty accurate. The story starts out as an action RPG, LitRPG story with horror elements. So Resident Evil with an action RPG skill tree. That's essentially what the game mechanics are. It is a very efficient opening. It doesn't waste time on like a super. I'll be honest. I felt like that novel description was longer than the actual introduction of backstory to the story. The story really does open with he's in chains. He's hanging out. It's like what's happened. And part of that is him figuring out what it is. That it's a game mechanic system world here. That he's kidnapped and he has an RPG interface and a system and a mission to solve. Then there's a rundown of like basic skill trees and the main character is off on his adventures, which mostly amount to him killing zombies and cultists and fighting towards rescuing a woman as a quest. It's a pretty good start to the story, I'll be honest. However, that sort of shifts. It really is a lot of action adventure RPG progression. The action RPG stuff is pretty detailed and there are lots of notifications. But as the story progresses, another element is introduced to the story that, for me at least, directly conflicted with the RPG progression system. At about 30%, you kind of see the first glimpse of this when the main character has like some mystical vision or is sent to a pocket dimension that lets him talk to fictional characters he's written as an author. And as somebody who writes, I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing to do. The section of the story talks about the nature of reality and simulations, and it was interesting, but it definitely felt out of place of the stuff that had come before it, the action RPG kind of theme of the story and like the game mechanics. And it's because the main character kind of has some level of control and interaction with his fictional characters in the world there. And it was definitely a speed bump in the story and the action pacing of the novel, but it existed. And as the story progresses, you see it really is setting up something else in the story, another system, where it explains where all the monsters on this island are coming from. And it kind of sets up this power of the imagination magic system that has nothing to do with LitRPG and kind of feels more like it belongs in the urban fantasy genre than in LitRPG, because it really does create some very wand wavy moments and explanations for all the stuff that's happening in this island. And it just felt so different from what you're forced to see as, the main character's progression system, which is an action RPG system, where really is just like the main character getting levels for killing monsters and doing quests and getting points to put into edge weapons, automatic weapons, handguns, stealth, all the familiar stuff for anybody who's played an action RPG game. And it really just conflicted with me up to the point towards the middle and end of the story where it's like, it's ruining, it really is ruining like the RPG stuff. Because even though the RPG stuff is there and it exists and it's very thorough, and the author put a lot of time and effort into thinking of ways to create that system and to expand it and to use it synergistically with other powers. Because this other system is like, it's just the power of imagination, it kind of overwrites that to a degree, even letting the main character kind of power level when he probably shouldn't. It doesn't make sense as far as like game mechanics go. And eventually towards the end, it definitely wand wavies away the resolution of the story, which I'm not going to spoil for you guys. As far as game mechanics go, again, nicely done. There's a lot of thought put into them. There's even some crafting, even though it's not particularly great crafting. It really amounts to like World of Warcraft. Break down items for like this basic crafting ingredients with different levels of quality. It's great, whatever items you want to. It's very button pressy, so not particularly impressed with that. But the game mechanics they exist throughout the entire story, and there's plenty of like notifications and skill descriptions and item descriptions. None of that is I'm trying to take away from that. It's that the entire story, it is a LitRPG story. But again, because the other story element, the other power system, the other magic system, the power of imagination bit, some of the main characters' progression feels unearned. Like there's literally a section of the story where he's in this pocket dimension. He power levels one of these skill trees all the way up to the maximum, which you wouldn't expect unless you're like in the end game of a video game. So he gets a power called plot armor, which keeps him from truly dying in an instance or scenario. He could die and he'll come back. And I thought it was a very funny gamer writer joke, but it does ruin the importance of the actual game mechanics. So like the threat of like, he needs to actually level and power and grow his skills to be able to overcome these obstacles. No, push through it. He can die. He can come back. It's a power that's kind of given to him as actual plot armor. And again, I get the double entendre. I get the joke. At the same time, it does kind of reflect, for me at least, that the game mechanics aren't really that important to this story. That there is another power system that's kind of wand wave away the things that are existing. For me at least, it conflicted with what I expect an RPG system and a delivery story to be important, to be as important as physics, and to be consistent. And for me at least, even though the action is good, at about the halfway point in the story, and for the rest of it, it felt like the RPG stuff didn't really matter because of the power imagination bit. Where allies and enemies are sort of magicking their way through conflicts with no real basis for the RPG elements. So it kind of ruined that aspect for me, unfortunately. And again, it ruins it for me. I'm a little bit nitpicky. It's one of my pet peeves that the RPG system should matter throughout the entire story. But if you don't care about this stuff, if that's not as important to you, I think I have a really good time with it. The action RPG elements are really nice in the story. There's some nice little twists in the storyline. That I think a lot of other people will enjoy. But for me, it's going to get a 6 out of 10. That just means it doesn't work for me, but it might work for you. Go give it a shot. It's Bleeding Edge Force book number 1 with a score of 6 out of 10. Okay, next up is going to be Jake's Magical Market, written by J.R. Matthews. It is 773 pages, $4.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. Meddling gods, a magic card system, an apocalypse no one could have predicted. Jake is working at the neighborhood market under his apartment when the world ends. He expects nuclear war, computer virus, or even climate change burning everyone to a crisp to bring about the downfall of civilization. But cruel and arbitrary gods from another world? Who could have guessed? When these cruel gods shuffled Earth like a deck of cards, nothing was in the same place anymore. Monsters, dungeons, and magic items appear scattered across the globe, and suddenly, everyone has access to a new, strange magical card system that gives them magical powers. Jake, wasting his day slacking off in the cooler as he usually did, found himself alone in a completely new and very dangerous world. Can he learn to survive? Can he collect enough cards and create a good enough deck to fight back against the monsters that have overtaken his former home? And why are these strange people looking a lot like elves, knocking on the door of the market he's hiding in, asking to buy some of his goods? The gods may have stacked the deck against him, but Jake just might have a few cards up his sleeve that will help him to survive. Okay, the novel description there actually only really applies to like the first quarter, 40% of the novel. Then there's a shift in this trend, which I'll talk about. This is a serial story. It's online still. There are several types of progression systems. The setting is an RPG apocalypse where the earth is broken up and mixed with dungeons and monsters that roam freely. And because this is more of a slice of life story and it's serialized, it feels that way. It's a collection that almost feels like two larger arcs of what's happening in the story universe. The first 40% is an RPG apocalypse story, very straightforward. Dungeon diving, card collecting, leveling, minor merchant stuff, which is the title of the story, the magical market bit, some relationship building to build up the main character and how he finds himself, and a slower introduction to the new rules of the world. After that 40% mark, though, the story seriously shifts as the main character is pushed into an entirely new environment. The entire marketplace thing disappears. He's literally gone from Earth. Minor spoiler there. And with all the benefit of the work he put into developing the card system and his power system through those cards. And it's here the main character develops and grows in power without using using a more fantasy cultivation magic system. It definitely feels like a forced change in the story where the author was like, I felt like the author was like, I'm getting tired of this card thing. I've kind of pushed it as far as it's going to go. Let's try something new. And he does. And he doesn't entirely disregard the card RPG progression system that he established before, but it definitely takes a backseat to this new cultivation fantasy magic system that the main character does. And through the rest of the story, there's still lots of action adventure. There's still really good world building, but the RPG progression system that I had invested in as a reader almost completely disappears. I'd say probably about 80% of it disappears from the story compared to like the first half of the novel. And it does take a back seat for the majority of the story. And it ends up being more like a currency system and a point of power division among like the classes in this like multi-world universe that uses these cards as a form of like not just energy, but also like regular day-to-day job working abilities. And that was just something that took away from the story for me a little bit. It was still a very entertaining story, and I had a good time with it, but it brought it down a little bit because I realized, after that 40% mark, the card system that I had invested in, the RPG progression system through the cards that I really liked, was kind of gone. It kind of disappears for something else. And for other people, the other thing, which is the fantasy cultivation progression aspect of the story, might be better for them, and that's perfectly okay. But for me, it dragged it down because I like LitRPG. On the game mechanic side of things, I really enjoyed the first half of the story, which I mentioned. The card system is very robust. There's a huge variety of cards based on people's fantasies, races, and what kind of monsters you kill. Killing monsters or clearing dungeons gets you special magic cards with spells, martial abilities, passive bonuses, and more. The cards can be upgraded and leveled by sacrificing other cards or combining with their own type to evolve them. This allowed for some really good creativity as the cards could be swapped out for different synergies and strategies and builds. Later in the story, again about 40% in, other systems emerge that take ambient magical energy to cast spell-like abilities and power carved runes that have a variety of aspects. The main character still grows in power, but it's not put in RPG terms like leveling anymore. And though the card system still exists, it isn't really used by the main character except to gain access to new magical domains. Much later, the other power sources emerge, even different ones, but those are the two mainly developed in the story. Overall, there's a lot of good things here. A lot of people really like this story. I think it has 700 positive reviews in only like a month or so, and that means a lot of people really love this. It has good action adventure. There's good world building, good character and relationship development. There are definitely places where I felt the story was pushed to kind of shift things in the story, which is perfectly acceptable. Remember, it's a serialized story, so this has been written over a long period of time with different arcs in mind. So, and to keep the serial going, sometimes you do have to do these radical shifts in environment and in location so that the story can still continue on, and the main character still is challenged. So I absolutely understand that. I was disappointed personally with the loss of the card system for the most part. I'd really come to enjoy it. But again, it doesn't disappear entirely. And it's still good overall, which for me shifts it more to more game lift than LitRPG because most of the story does kind of shift focus away from the card RPG system. But still, had a good time with it. Gets a score of 7.6 out of 10 for me. As Jake's Magical Market with a score of 7.6 out of 10, which is above average good. Okay, next up is going to be Apocalypse Online, an Apocalypse Lit RPG adventure written by Robin Weidman. It is 507 pages, $4.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. At first, everyone thought it was a game, but aliens have arrived and they are turning people into fertilizer. Brad and Sam are gamers, and when they started playing the hot new game Apocalypse Online, they had no idea that the game was a preview of reality. With the help of a benevolent alien AI and nanotechnology, our heroes have a chance to survive the apocalypse. They just have to survive, level up, and find other survivors. Jake is no gamer, but when he finds out aliens have arrived, he'll do anything to protect his sister Sam. Will they be able to grow strong enough for the second wave, or will they become alien plant food? Okay, this is a multi-narrative RPG apocalypse story, and for me, it was kind of just okay. It doesn't do anything wrong, but it doesn't do anything new and bring anything different to the table. I've read plenty of RPG apocalypse stories, and this is kind of just par for the course. It's very slice of life. There isn't really a plot here at all. You mostly just follow the three separate main characters as they deal with the sudden invasion of aliens that mimic a recently popular hardcore mode MMO. And as far as the story goes, again, not much plot. The characters wander around, they fight a variety of monsters and some oddly antagonistic anti-RPG pill people, which was kind of a weird thing to introduce. They take upgrades or level, and for much of the story, I kind of wondered where it was going, or if the main characters would ever get some big quest that would give them direction to solve the apocalypse or fight back. Instead, it's mostly just like them fighting monsters randomly or going on some minor side quests to find upgrade stations or save some other survivors. It felt like more like a tutorial than the main game. On the game mechanic side of things, not bad. Again, people that pop a special pill designed by the aliens get an RPG interface and an AI that helps to direct them and give them advice while they're leveling. These folks, the people who on Earth who survived the initial attacks, can either take that pill or gather ether from monsters and use it to kind of in a cultivation style, kind of expand their power base. But the folks who take the pill, they get ether in exchange. It's their version of experience points from killing monsters when you use to level, get a class, get gene therapy for some unique bonuses, or use it as a kind of currency to make 3 items from a 3D printer set in these upgrade stations. Again, nothing really new here except for like maybe the gene therapy aspect. I was a little disappointed the characters didn't level more. I think they only hit level 1 or 2 for the most part in the entire story. But again, that's part of them being maybe on the hardcore mode of the RPG apocalypse. The alternative to leveling is in cultivation. But even that was definitely a bigger disappointment, because if you're going to introduce cultivation into a universe, it should probably feel like cultivation, and it really didn't. It's not really developed much. I think in the entire novel, there's about, 5 paragraphs that say, oh, you need to like stretch your energy as you move around, or like the beginning of like establishing a core, or like, binding it to your and it was kind of disappointing. I've read plenty of cultivation novels, and this was definitely among like the least interesting descriptions of what cultivation could. I mean, it might be something that author plans to expand in like the second book or later on in the series, but for me, the cultivation aspect was super weak. Overall, nothing negative, nothing outstanding about the story. It's kind of middle of the road. I think a more focused plot would have brought some of the elements of the story together better and created more tension. But again, overall, it's kind of an okay story. For me, Apocalypse Online, it gets a score of 7.2 out of 10. Still had a fine time with it. Nothing bad. Again, I still think it's a good story. It's just more along the lines of, oh, this is okay. I'm not sure if I'll read a second book in the novel, but I wasn't, I didn't regret, I guess, reading book number one. It had potential, but it felt a little loose for me on book one, at least. So it's Apocalypse Online with a score of 7.2 out of 10, which is still a good review score. Okay, next up is going to be Leveling with the Gods. It is currently, as of this recording, 30 plus chapters. It is free online. There was no English publisher. This is a online webcomic that is translated by fan groups. Here is the comic description. He became stronger, faster than anyone else, but he lost. In the end, there was only despair for Kim Yuan. In his last moments, he was given another chance. Through the sacrifice of his comrade, his fate had not yet been sealed. Returning back to the past, he attempts to climb the tower again with his unmatched talent to fight the ancient evils that threaten to destroy the tower. Okay, fundamentally, this is a regressor story with tower climbing. The first part of the webcomic is about the test to get into the tower, with the main character using his foreknowledge about the test to get a big advantage and power up. The beginning portion, like most of the release chapters, probably feel more like an RPG apocalypse story where monsters suddenly appear and the characters, the people in the world, have to survive the different quests and missions that they're given to qualify essentially to go into the towers that have appeared throughout their world. And that's what most of the release chapters are currently. It's only in the more recent release chapters that the main character gets to get into the tower, and that's a whole expansive universe that leans a little more towards fantasy, and that's gets you a real introduction and in coordination with the gods that exist in this universe, and they're familiar gods, Greek gods, Roman gods, different pantheons that exist and vie for power through their followers and demigods, and it's an interesting system. I really like time with it. It's a very action-oriented story. The artwork is delightful. It is crisp and clean and colorful, and conveys like the fantasy action aspects of the story very well. I had a good time with it. And the main character, even though he's a regressor, he still has to fight for his power, and he does. Just when he feels overpowered to a degree, he's always faced with these challenges and these opponents that make him still struggle. And I think that's part of the story that I always like about the regressor novels, is that somebody comes back from the past, relives their entire timeline, but they're using that foreknowledge intelligently. And the power of the game they still have to work for, even though they have ideas about cheats or different things that combine to give them power boost. There's always somebody who's more powerful than them that they have to fight through or face off against that test the limits of how they're progressing. So this is a good story. Had a good time with it. I'm still enjoying it as it progresses. Leveling with the Gods gets a score 7.5 out of 10. Very solid, enjoyable review score. Again, that's 7.5 out of 10 for Leveling with the Gods. Definitely go check out this online webcomic. Okay, that's it for the show. Thanks a lot for listening, for watching. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, and our website at LitRPGpodcast.com to see all the latest reviews, all the links in the show notes, and also just to see what's been released recently for the last couple of weeks, and also what's coming up ahead. We have all those lists on our website, so you can always check them out there as well. And of course, we have links in the show notes for other LitRPG podcast pages, LitRPG pages that connect you to your favorite authors, or places where you can get recommendations for new books that have come out recently. And of course, you can find out all the ways to support the podcast at litrpgpodcast.com/support. And until we can hang it again, folks, remember to go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody.